I'm curious, in your retreats, what have you seen? Like, I know from reading your book that I've just been like, of what's possible.
Speaking really transparently, in the last year or two, I never thought in my life that I would be seeing what I'm seeing as a result of a person's ability to overcome themselves and to connect this to this invisible field of frequency or energy that somehow informs the body in a very short amount of time. I never thought I would see. We had, at one event, we had two people that were blind. Now, it's a stretch for a lot of people. By the end of that event, they were seeing. I mean, just the odds of one person
Yeah.
having that experience is 1 in billions. And now you have two at the same event. This is
amazing.
And it's so important, because when they stand on the stage and they tell their story, it's changing people's consciousness. Like, I would never think that I would see that like that. Two in one event. One would be a surprise. The people in the audience are become conscious of the 4-minute mile. Like, oh my God, somebody did that actually broke through. It's a possibility now, and they believe in possibility a little bit more, and belief has a strong effect on the outcomes that we see. Disbelief also has the similar outcomes, but it's always the same, right? So the person who was in a wheelchair with muscular dystrophy, I mean, and I've studied healthcare for over 30 years, and you just never see someone with muscular dystrophy ever change. And if you research it or Google it or whatever, you're going to see the very first line say there is no cure, right? And here's a kid that just had one moment, and he's standing up out of his wheelchair. He's on his feet. He's moving from side to side, and he's talking, and the way he's talking is so contagious, because you're sharing the joy of his experience, the way what he's doing. People with ALS that had a lot of paralysis and loss of motor function, getting up on their own again, getting out of wheelchairs again, and feeding themselves again. Parkinson's disease, dramatic changes in tension tremors and facial paralysis and pain and tremors. All those things are changing. We've had numerous people now with, and this was a change in my own personal belief, with stage 4 cancers, where the cancer metastasizes to bones, to livers, to other organs. Their reversal of the cancer literally changes their bone structure. There's no evidence of the eating away of the bone any longer. The tumor is gone in the liver, in the lung, in the abdominal organs. I mean, we look at this from a research perspective, and we're blown away. And that's so cool, because the evidence that we're seeing in the science, where we're seeing the plasma of advanced meditators actually taking the energy out of the cancer cells, the fundamental question is, where is that information coming from? The person's not changing their diet. They're not taking a drug. They're not eating anything differently. The information that is being transmitted on that blood is coming from within them. Now, that's exactly where it's coming from. People say, oh my God, are you saying that meditation can actually help cancer or cause a resistance to a virus and change the Alzheimer's gene? I say, no, actually, I'm not saying that. The data is actually saying that. And that's the data. If the data is saying that, it's a change in consciousness. And I want people to see the data, and our data is really, really compelling, and listen to those testimonies of people. I watch some of those testimonies maybe 10 times in a row. I'm not kidding you, because I just cannot believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
I want to remember.
That's profound.
I want to remember that. It's powerful to see and we have cancer researchers and doctors stand on the stage that were serious health conditions, and their health conditions are gone. They understood it. The science made sense to them, so the application made sense. People in wheelchairs, numerous people with spinal cord injuries or strokes, walking normally, just they're out of their wheelchairs. Some of them are running now. They're in a completely new body. In some level, they're in a completely new life, and they're not in the same future that they were headed to. They're in this whole new future. And the importance of a person standing on the stage to finalize this question and do testimony and tell their story. There's nothing like a great story. And they don't look vegan. They don't look gluten-free. They don't look young. They don't look buffed. They don't look like they're any different than anybody else. And it's a great way for people to realize that this person is an example of truth, right? And that's the 4-minute mile. And then people do the best with what they only know is possible. And if they don't know that healing is possible, they'll make the same choice. Now all of a sudden it's in the tribe, it's in the culture. It's that people are aware of this, and consciousness is awareness, and awareness is energy and frequency. You change your awareness, you change your energy. And so the collective now becomes aware of another possibility. And in our week-long events, it's very common that once one person gets up and tells the story of how they healed themselves of whatever health condition that they had, somehow, and then once it's in the collective, it starts happening a whole lot more. And just like an infection can spread a disease in the community, health and wellness starts become as infectious as disease. And I've seen things this year that has truly blown my mind, where people were making those dramatic changes in their health.
Wow. I'm curious, what is that like to facilitate? Like, what is it when you look back at like the birth of your work to where things are today, and even the birth of your life, but to be here today and be part of that, I'm just like, that must feel so profound to be part of.
I think a lot of us get into things because we want to either create or we want to discover, right? And discovering, like seeing some of these things as possible. The research calls that we have that we're shaking our heads.
Right. Yeah.
We're shaking our heads going like, oh my God, this is actually the truth. Like, this is the truth. For me personally, when we look at those type of outcomes, it's hard to go back to business as usual.
Yeah, I bet.
And the conversations that we have now with reputable scientists and researchers, when they see our data, then they say, that's 7 days. 7 days. 7 days, we're seeing these dramatic changes in 84% of the population. In 7 days, you don't see a drug do that, right? A drug study, it's never 7 days. It's months, and you're seeing, and the efficacy is so high. The conversations that we're having now are more about possibility, because the data is speaking. It's the data that's saying it, and you can't deny the data. And when our scientists do the studies 5 different ways, I'm so excited, because I just know they're really getting ready to change a belief, because every way they run it, it turns out the same. They're going, oh my God, this is actually the truth. So making your own pharmacy of chemicals, and sitting down, here's the cool part, sitting down and assigning meaning to the act of doing it, like understanding what you're doing, understanding why you're doing it. The how actually gets easier, and you produce greater outcomes. So we use that constant reminder of the science and the information. So the what and the why makes the how more instrumental. The person's going to get greater results out of it. And that's what our data actually suggests. I can say now with so much more certainty that this is not pseudoscience.
Yeah.
I could say that. I can't. It's no longer, oh, that's just pseudoscience. We can't say that any longer. It's science, and our scientists really that are doing the research they're the ones they're changing their belief. And when they start a lecture and they call it evolution of the species, that's a big, huge, a huge sign that something great is happening. When you see a scientist in the last line of his presentation with all these volcano maps and all these statistics say, you are what you think, that's the last slide. You're in shock. So science is changing now because we're changing the science, which is super cool.